back to Love Your Food. This week we have a Thanksgiving classic here. We are making pumpkin pie and we are making it from scratch. So this is from fresh pumpkin. Very simple recipe. As I said, it's a classic. Everyone remembers their own homemade pumpkin pie. It's amazing, really, really easy. And we're going to take you through with some ingredients. We're starting with our fresh pumpkin. Pie pumpkins, a little smaller than carving ones. A can of evaporated milk. We have some cloves and allspice. We have a little bit of salt, some nutmeg, and some cinnamon. All the amounts are going to be in the description below as usual. Some grated dried ginger. This is our pie crust from last week. We're going to show you this already rolled out. We have some eggs and some sugar. So the first thing we are going to start with is our pumpkin. So as I said earlier, pie pumpkins are these smaller ones. The big ones that you use for carving are not all that delicious. They don't have a lot of flavor, so we want to use these smaller ones. They're much tastier. Now, we're going to cut this open. It helps to have a very sharp knife. If you're using a serrated knife, you just want to push down through the pumpkin. You don't want to saw it with a serrated knife. So as with any pumpkin, we're just going to get all of the innards out. So we're going to carve all of the seeds and goop out. This one actually turned out to be a little smaller than we were expecting. It had a little less meat in it than we were really looking for, which means we had to make some recipe adjustments on the fly, which is fine. We're showing you the adjusted recipe with the amount of pumpkin we got. It also might be slightly old because it was a little bit stringy, but once it's roasted and mashed, it all has the same good texture and flavor. So we're going to get the insides out. We're going to poke the insides with a fork. We just want to encourage a little bit of even roasting. So make sure you get good and in there. It's probably not as required on that one that's a little bit shredded, but a little tiny sprinkle of salt. Some recipes call for you to oil the pumpkin. We don't really feel the need to do that. We're going to put this on our parchment-lined baking pan here. We have a nice little small one that will exactly fit one of these little pumpkins. And that's going to go into our preheated oven. That's 350 degrees, and we're going to cook that for about 40 minutes, about 45. Until it's nice and roasted all the way through, and we've got our pumpkin is all nice and soft. So here's what it looks like when it's coming out. So you see it's shrunk a little bit, and when you touch it, it should just kind of yield to your finger and not bounce back. That means it's good and soft in there. Then we're going to scrape all of the pumpkin meat away from the skin. You don't really want the skin in your final product. It's not tasty. It's kind of got an unpleasant texture and doesn't really break up. So we're going to get as much as we can out of here. It can be a little bit tricky. And we're just going to scrape off all of the meat. If you find any little pieces of skin like this, once you've mashed it all together, makes it really, really easy to find any residual pieces of skin, like that right there. And it's really simple to mash. You just get a spoon in there, and you don't need to put it in a blender or anything. It's really, really very, very soft. As I said, this is a little less pumpkin than we were expecting out of the pumpkin we bought. The walls were quite thin, so we ended up with 2 cups of pumpkin instead of the 3 we were expecting, but it all came out fine in the end. So here's our whole spices. We're just going to grind these in our spice grinder. So that was the cloves and allspice. And you want that pretty fine. You don't want large chunks of clove. You don't want to bite into a clove or a big chunk of allspice in your final pie. You want everything to be nice and smooth. So there you go. That's about as fine as we want it. So we're going to start by mixing up our ingredients. So we're going to start with the sugar. And to that, we're going to add our eggs. We got 3 whole eggs. We're not separating these at all. Now, one of the adjustments we did make was to go down from 4 to 3 eggs. We left the sugar the same because we cut the sugar down quite a lot from traditional recipes. We don't like the super sweet pumpkin pie, so we had cut it down enough that we used the same amount of sugar, and it was still not too sweet. The pumpkin pie wasn't all weighted down with all that sugar. So we're just going to whip the eggs and sugar together until it's nice and pale. It doesn't have to be to the ribbon or anything. Then we're going to add our cinnamon, nutmeg, salt, cloves, allspice, and ginger. So all of your favorite pumpkin spices. And not only is that going to make an amazing aroma, it's going to make that beautiful dark color. And then we're just going to add in our nice roasted pumpkin. So that's going to go in next. There we go. So all of our pumpkins now in there. And we're just going to whisk this well together until everything's well combined. It's going to make a fairly soupy batter for the inside of your pie. And you do want to try and mush down or try and break up any large chunks of pumpkin or any of the little fibrous pieces into smaller pieces if you can. You don't want, again, you want to have a sort of a smooth final product. You don't want it to be lumpy or anything like that. We're going to add our can of condensed milk. Sorry, evaporated milk. That's different from condensed milk. We're using a non-sweetened. It's an evaporated milk. And we're just going to get that well whisked until it's combined and there are no large chunks of pumpkin or anything in there. It's all the same size. It's all good and small. We're going to get a baking tray. And here is our pie crust from last week. We have already done the work around the edges on that one. And then just before you add your pie mix, you're going to give it a last little whisk to make sure it's all well combined, nothing settling to the bottom. Now there is a temperature change involved in the baking process here, and we're going to discuss that in the description below. But we do want to give everything a bit of a kickstart. So once everything is in there, we're going to very carefully move that back into the oven. And at 425, we are going to bake that. Now you see Chef Caleb setting the timer for about 45 minutes. I think we came a little early and did drop the temperature down to 350, as you can see here. So I think it was about after half an hour we dropped the temperature. So here you can see our pie has a really good color on top already, but it is definitely not set. So because we had set the temperature a little bit high, and we left it in a little bit longer than we probably should have, we don't want the crust to get much darker than this. So if you find your crust getting a little dark, you can always make a little shield out of tinfoil like this. It will help. It does work wonders. It's not it's not always easy. It's a little tricky. But yeah, definitely will protect your crust from browning too much or burning. So we have another 20 minutes to go on this. And then once that is done, that's going to come out. And you can see it is well set now. A little bit of a jiggle. That is perfect. That will continue setting as the carryover baking finishes all of the cooking process inside. We're going to test that with a knife, and the knife comes out almost clean. That is perfect. So that is done. That is ready to go. So we're going to let that cool down. We can take off of our little aluminum foil shields now. And that's it. That's the whole recipe. Absolutely fantastic, really, really easy to make, delicious. Top it with some whipped cream. Really excellent recipe. Again, as I said, just a Thanksgiving classic. Also great around the holidays, around Christmas, and no one will ever complain if you put pumpkin pie in front of them. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.